welcome to another Corona tutorial. This time we will take a look at utilizing Corona Scatter to create some forest and a meadow. So basically we will be using it to distribute some foliage. We will be creating complete scene from scratch, but I have prepared some assets, which are just 2 trees and 6 small grass patches. 3 of them is just simple grass, 2 of them are like some tall grass with some wheat or something, and 1 is just some dandelions. So first thing I'm gonna do is just to do quick test render to see if everything is okay and all our objects have some good materials and they render correctly. Okay, so I'm gonna take all my assets, put them aside, create a new plane, make it 100 by 100 meters and center the plane. Let's increase the subdivisions so we have some more topology to work with. I'm gonna add a displace modifier, set luminance center to be in the middle, so 0.5, and create a noise. Plug noise in and start by setting displacement strength to something like 20 meters. Now I'm gonna play with displacement, so turbulence, swap the colors, set levels to 10 and increase the size to like something like 5,000, maybe 10,000. Okay, this looks good. And if I just look around, looks like some nice terrain, maybe too tall, but I don't like this peak right here in the middle, so I'm gonna offset the center of the map like this and just scrub around to find some nice this looks quite nice, and maybe increase strength slightly. And now we're gonna set up some lighting, but first let's just take all of our assets and push them away a little further. Create a new Corona sun like this. Alright, we want something like sunset. Add Corona sky environment. If we now do quick render, we will have to set up exposure for the exterior daylight. That looks good. Okay, and now we will set up our ground material. So for that, let's just grab ground material and assign it, label it ground. Let's grab Corona bitmap. Let's go to the ground textures, take this one. This is how it looks, so this is what we'll use, and set blur to 0.1 so it's a bit sharper, especially for the bump mapping. Instance it also to bump, increase the bump to something like 2.5. Now let's assign our ground material, display the texture, and increase the tiling somewhat. 20 by 20 looks good. And 2 things. This is obviously quite simple material, no reflection or something like that, but it's going to be mostly covered by grass, so we do not need to waste too much time on it. And here you can also see tiling, but again it's going to be mostly covered by grass patches, so we just need something that will roughly give us some color or some texturing, not some detailed material. And to see how it looks, we first need to enable render hidden lights so that when we are in isolation mode we see what's going on. And I think we can go a little harder on bump, so like 3 maybe, go a little more up close, see how it looks. Alright, that doesn't look bad. Obviously we have some shadowing artifacts, but that can be fixed later on if it will be necessary to fix in the first place. Okay, so this is it for our ground material. Let's go again here, disable the display of the texture, because now we will use vertex paint modifier, and we will display the vertex color. We will fill the entire plane with the black color. Get a brush, set size to like 20 meters, set color to white, and now I will just paint where I want my forests to be. Okay, so I'm just painting borders now, and we will have some meadow in the middle, so something like this looks good. Our camera will be looking from here. Let's again decrease to like 2 meters. Our brush size, set it to black, and just make the edges slightly irregular. 5 meters, so it's not so tiny, just some irregularity in there. Okay, blur it a few times like this, and now okay, I will select, yes, select the vertex paint, disable the display of our vertex map channel. Now we will grab just a Corona scatter, so we will go here to Corona, create Corona scatter, we'll distribute it on our ground, and what we will be distributing are these two trees. First tree, second tree, and you can see they are in there, but we need also vertex color channel, since we painted vertex color, and plug it into density slot. Great. Okay, so we will now increase the scatter count to something like 100 for starters. Looks good, and we will disable the alignment of frame to normal, show them as boxes, and now we will randomize the rotation by 360 degrees, so basically from minus 180 to 180. We'll slightly, very slightly increase the rotation variation also in X and Y axis. For the scale, we'll go from like 70% to 100%, and we'll try to create some dense forest appearance. Therefore, if we keep it this way and we render, you can see there's not much of a coverage here, especially around the trunks. So there's a nice little trick. Just set minimum translation in the Z axis to something like minus 0.5. So some of the trees will be pushed further in the ground and they will look like bushes, and they will make forest appear a lot more dense. And also let's vastly increase the amount of the trees. And now if we render, we can see we have something much nicer. Let's maybe ease up on the exposure, make it brighter, increase highlight compression slightly, maybe increase contrast just slightly. Now for the preview purposes, now let's isolate all the trees, render again. And both of the trees we are distributing, which are here, are sharing the same material. So we need to grab just one material. Now we will use Corona multi-map with just two colors. And one is gonna be like orangey, one is gonna be like really green, like this. And let's go like 220 on the saturation, and for the value is very important that we will set it to 128. I will show you why. So let's make sure the value of both these colors is 125. Now let's grab Corona mix texture, grab it here. Our top texture is going to be our multi-map. Our bottom texture is gonna be our leaf texture, and it's gonna go here and also here. And now if we in a Corona mix texture set mix operation to a overlay, then basically having value the luminance of the color to 128 means overlay operation will not affect luminance of our texture, but only the saturation of our texture. And here we want to increase mix amount to 50%, so there will be random blending between those two colors, and we want that random blending to be based on the instance. All right, and now if we again isolate these trees, you can see now maybe we need to go a little bit closer. You can see now that our trees have randomized colors. Some are more orangey, some are or brownish, some are more green. So this is it basically for the randomization of our trees. Let's go back and again render the scene as it is. Okay, now let's go here. Let's edit our layout, make it a little bit more interactive rendering friendly. This is going to be my interactive rendering viewport, so I'm going to enable save frame. And based on the save frame, I'm going to resize the viewport. And once I have resized our viewport, I will set up I will create just a camera, free camera, and our camera is going to be here. I'm going to enable save frame, make it shaded. Our interactive is going to be here, and here's going to be our material editor. And so we'll go to render settings and make sure our secondary solver is set to path tracing. Firstly, because we are rendering an exterior scenario, and secondly, because we want to improve interactivity of our interactive rendering. If there was UHD cache would have to be pre-computed before every interactive rendering change, so it would slow down the feedback slightly. Okay, so now let's save our scene just to be sure and fire up our interactive render. Let's now make sure it is locked to our camera view. Great. And let's just position the camera and find some nice angle in our scene. This all looks kind of boring, to be honest. So maybe place our camera like somewhere in here. We may also go easier on the displacement. Okay, this is better. I'm still not completely happy with it, but it's definitely better. Okay, so let's find some nice spot for our camera. Oh, let's go with this. Our forest could be slightly more dense. And we want to play with our light angle. So this is the viewport. Let's lock it to this viewport. Again, make sure it's locked so we can navigate this freely without losing our camera view. And now let's find some nice sun angle for our camera. And I think this looks quite nice. I want to have some shadows in the foreground. So there's some both shadows and sunlight in our foreground, but at the same time I want to have that nice orange sunset light from the sun. Yep, I think this is what I want to go with. So let's disable our interactive render once again. Save just to make sure. And now let's grab our ground and our grass patches, isolate them. Let's get another crown scatter, distribute on our ground, and what we want to distribute are these patches and the dandelions. Put them in there. Great. Now for the dandelions, they are going to be really rare compared to other instances in the scene, so I'm gonna set frequency just to something like 0.5, and this weed is not gonna be as frequent as regular grass patches as well, so let's set frequencies for them, for those two weed patches, to something like 0.1. Now for the grass, we want to have scale variation between 80 and 120%. We do not want any of the grass to be under the ground. We want them to be aligned to normal, and we want to slightly boost the rotational variance in X and Y. And since we're gonna need several 100,000 or probably up to million of the grass patches, then we're gonna decrease the displayed percentage to something like 0.1 in our viewport, and start off with something like 50,000 scattered instances. And let's do a test render. And you can see we will likely need much more. And also we wanna use this view, as this is the view our render view is locked into. Alright, so let's increase it to like 500,000. Now this is significantly better, but we still see some holes in between the grass patches, so we might need to go in the end with something like 800,000. And our viewport is slowing down slightly, so let's again decrease this percentage even further. Save our scene, go to our camera view, whoops. Make sure our camera view is locked so we don't accidentally move it. And let's do another test render. And this is starting to look pretty nice. The trees are maybe a bit on the darker side, so I'm gonna have to do something about that. Let's just go here. Our source texture is this, but it already drives reflection glossiness, so maybe make trees slightly reflective, but we do not want to overly affect reflection glossiness as well, so let's put another output between here and here. Great, and here we're gonna make leaves slightly brighter and more washed out. Okay, so if I now render, that looks better. The green color that is being overlaid from the multimap may be way too saturated, so let's go with saturation like 190 right in there, so these trees in there are not so crazily saturated. Okay, this is starting to look pretty nice. I'm gonna slightly adjust our camera angle so we do not waste as much space on just plain sky. So let's unlock our camera, tilt it slightly, lock it again. Let's look at our scene from the overview. Yep, that's nice little place we got going on in there. And let's now also create some rocks, just so we have something else in the scene, not just grass and trees. Okay, so again, let's save the scene. And I don't have this part prepared too much, so Please excuse me if I spend some time guessing what to do. Okay, so let's try to copy this plane and convert to editable poly. Select what we see in the viewport. I'm gonna grow the selection, invert it, delete what we do not see, and now I'm gonna isolate this and tessellate it towards the camera manually. So I'm gonna grab both camera and this, create, rotate my view, show the camera cone, and let's go here. Alright, let's split this in half approximately, do mesh smooth, split this in half, do mesh smooth, split this in half, do mesh smooth, and again do mesh smooth. And our stats are saying 200,000 polygons, so we may afford also some turbo smooth in the end to increase the detail. And since this is going to be rock, it's going to be sharp, so if we disable the smoothing, we get basically some more definition for free. Okay, quit the isolation, save our scene just to be sure, grab this, also this. Now I'm gonna create some procedural network, but first let's put on displacement, and let's go with cellular and output. Output is gonna be our adapter, and I'm gonna plug it here. Basically I'm using this just so whenever I'm plugging something in the displacement modifier, I have to plug it just here in the material editor. I don't have to go all the way here, plug it into here. It's just closer, especially when I have my material editor on the other monitor. So plug in the cellular, increase it to like 3 meters for start, and let's just play with this a little bit. Set this to chips, fractal 10, non-adaptive, increase the size to like 1000, and those are some nice rocks. Okay, let's grab the displacement and let's angle all those rocks in the same direction so they look somewhat interesting. I'm gonna put my material editor aside so I see what I'm doing, and let's also bring back our scene. So 3 meters is way too much, let's go with 2 meters, 1 meter, and maybe rotate this all the way around. Yep, this looks interesting. Let's play with it more, but first change the color. So whoops, let's put in another material. Changing color doesn't work because we have already material assigned. I want to see just rocks, not so the rock basically doesn't blend with the ground. And let's just keep rotating around until we find something that I like. And this could work nicely. Gonna add another turbo smooth and disable the smooth result. It looks a little lumpy, so maybe, oops, maybe do not rotate the displays as much. This looks nice. Now we can play with the luminance center, 0.4, 0.5. Okay, so this is our base for the rocks. I can isolate it. Gonna disable turbo smooth for now so it's a bit faster. And let's mix the cellular with something. Let's go with perhaps noise. Plug it in there. Fractal. As many iterations as we can. Just go like this. 0.1. So we stretch it. Plug in another one. Okay. Oh, let's first put this one back and tweak it a little bit more. So clamp it slightly, and now duplicate this, mix them together, plug them in there, but let's rotate one. Let's stretch one in the other direction, mix them 50-50, so we get something like this. Up front we can see how it looks. And let's go ahead and mix this with our original cellular texture. And again play with the displays. Okay, so I'm starting to get satisfied with the way those rocks look, but maybe ease up on the strength even further. Again, skew the stones, look around. Now let's try to render it along with our grass scatter. Oh, these are trees, I think. Yep, I wanted grass. So this is grass, okay. Yep, we got some stones, so all we need to do now is shade those stones and we are good to go. Okay, so first let's optimize our stones, which means we will select the stones and the ground. We'll duplicate the ground, collapse it, add shell to it. Oops. Like this. And now our duplicated ground has some volume. So we will use volume select. Inside of a mesh object, which is going to be our ground. And it's going to select faces. Gonna take a little while because this is quite a heavy operation. I hope it doesn't crash. Oh, it doesn't look very positive, does it? Let's give it a while. Okay, so we are back. I actually had to shut down Max, so let's forget about this little idea of optimizing the stones and let's just keep it that way. Max is really not very reliable when using these complex operations on high poly meshes. Okay, so oops, oh good, didn't crash again. I'm gonna delete volume select and I'm gonna just use the Pro Optimizer straight ahead without cutting away our are the parts of the mesh that were below the ground. So let's calculate our mesh and see how many polygons can we reduce it to without losing too much detail. This is gonna take a while as well, but hopefully it's not gonna crash. There we go. So going to our camera and observing the amount of detail we have, we can try to go like to 30%. And as you can see, we have lost just slight detail, but our poly count has dropped significantly. So I'm gonna collapse it as it is. And now I'm gonna just texture it, I guess, or create some new material for it. So let's go with crown material. Name it stones. Put on a bitmap. And I think I want something like this, perhaps. Decrease the blur. Apply to the mesh. We have no UVs thanks to the Pro Optimizer, so just put on box mapping. If I render the preview, it doesn't look bad, but maybe I'm gonna use some different texture. Oh, let's try this one. Yeah, this looks better. Increase the tiling further. Now let's use these textures also for bump mapping. Increase the bump mapping slightly. Now I'm gonna put in Corona AO. That's because it will fake the appearance that the rocks have some deeper crevices in them, even when in reality they don't. So if I put this into unoccluded color and render, you will see it appears a bit deeper in those cracks. But maybe decrease this to 0.1 meters and increase the color spread. So we just amplify those cracks and not darken the stone overall. And let's also make it slightly reflective. So like 0.3 to 0.2, glossiness 0.2. Actually, let's drive glossiness with this. And let's turn off diffuse, just so we see the reflection glossiness. And turn diffuse back on. And render again. And actually I will want to mask reflection by ambient occlusion as well, so let's just duplicate it, put it here. It's not really optimal way to do it, but for the sake of time we have left, let's just do it this way. Okay, and before we go to the final diffuse, I'm gonna increase the contrast of our stone texture, so it really looks more harsh like this. And let's go back to our scene and render it once again. Yep, we got some nice rocks. They are maybe too dark overall, but we can just tweak that. Alright, so let's set the focus of our camera to the rock in front, which is, I think, this one. Yep. And let's go to the depth of field, enable it. Let's try like 2.8 f-stop and see if we can get this foreground slightly blurred. Maybe just 2. Increase the resolution and do a small region to see how blurry is our foreground. It's light, but it looks good. Alright, so I'm gonna cancel this. I'm gonna cancel the region. Hopefully I did. Yep, I did. And I'm going to render this, and once this scene is fully rendered, then I'm gonna resume this video and I'm gonna try some quick post-processing in Photoshop. Okay, so I'm back. The scene is rendering for about 9 minutes and it looks already quite clean. It's just 32 passes, but I can tell it's already, I don't see noise anywhere, like eye-catching grain, so I would this is the kind of quality I wouldn't be ashamed to hand off to a client. So I'm gonna stop the render here, fire Photoshop, and in the meanwhile I'm gonna save this. Whoops, Photoshop stole the focus. I'm gonna save this as trees.tiff, 8 color, no alpha needed. There we go, and let's put it here. Okay, and now I'm gonna improvise because I haven't prepared for this part. So what I would do generally is just duplicate a layer. I'm gonna go destructively here, collapsing the layer all the time because it saves time. It's the destructive workflow, but it's a lot faster, so it won't take too much time. I'm gonna blur this. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and let's set it to like 50 pixels so we get some foggy kind of mood, but not too much. So let's make opacity like 35. Now let's add slide vignette. Some curves. Now some color balance, so in the highlights we're gonna shift it towards colder tones, shadows towards warmer tones, and general saturation should go slightly lower. We can see the trees in the background are blurred by depth of field, so this is our area of focus. Okay, but before I focus on that, I'm gonna duplicate this, saturate this, blur it, maybe with motion blur. That could be interesting. Let's try that. Let's try go for something like God Race. And let's add it through linear dodge, but let's also put levels on it. And we should be able to make it somewhat contrasty like this, and decrease the opacity. Yep, this looks nice. Go to brightness, contrast, overall adjustment, but we do not want that sky to be all white, so let's not overdo it. This looks nice. And now I'm gonna just get gradient, if I find it. Here we go, from white to black. Oops, this is what I didn't want to do, flatten the image. And here I'm gonna grab radial gradient. I might need to invert it. And here is where I want to have some focal point, so I will just set it to overlay. I want to bring focus to this area, so I will bring this area, make it lighter, brighter, and make the rest of the image slightly darker. Let's see what Photoshop thinks about the contrast. So let's try auto contrast. It could go like 50-50. So I'll blend it 50-50 with mine and some final boost in the curves. Yep, and even more adjustments. We can use the good old cliche chromatic aberration. And sharpen it slightly. Alright, I think if I now copy all of this and revert, this is what we had before, this is what we have now. I think this is quite a change, and that it really helped to slightly increase the realism of the output. So let's look at it. Yeah, so I'm happy with the result, and I think this is it for the tutorial. So basically from scratch we had just two trees and a few grass clumps, and in less than an hour I think we've managed to create this nice picture. So this is it for the tutorial, and see you next time.